now move to item 13, which is the,
Mr. Chair, Councillor Cooper and I have a conflict.
Okay, thank you.
Or do you?
So this is the update or the review of the and the work program for the district licensing committees. Thank you, Margaret, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take this report as read. We came to the committee back in June with the findings of our district licensing committee review, and it was resolved at that meeting that we would undertake to develop a work program which would basically capture all of the improvements that we heard through all of our stakeholder engagement within that review and follow that through with a work program. So this report presents a draft work program for the committee's consideration and approval, and I'd just like to note that we have held workshops, additional workshops since the last meeting back in June with local boards, the 3 local boards down south, including Chair Lydia Saucony, who came and spoke to the committee earlier today. So we've certainly heard their views and have definitely taken into consideration the proposed actions which actually do form part of the forward work program. Some of those which aren't noted in the report but which Chair Saucony raised today, they are actually under consideration, and they are basically in the process of being worked through with staff and as to how we can actually roll those out at an operational level.
Okay, thank you. I'll move that we endorse this work program. Seconded by Councillor Penrose. No questions? Or Councillor Webster?
Yes, thank you. This work will be really helpful because I noted that as part of the silly regulations or whatever it is, work that was done, Minister Bennett actually pointed out some of the nonsenses that are happening with decisions being made, like people in retirement villages deciding that they haven't got a licence so they can't have a drink, and really, I mean, some of these issues are becoming nonsensical. Also, been brought to my attention that an applicant applies for an alcohol licence for a bottle store, for example. So the staff recommend a designation. The designation goes on that they can only take their own child in, and that, I mean, if they're babysitting or they're looking after grandchildren or whatever, they can't take the child in, to leaving them in the car. And 1 or 2 areas where that's actually been a designation put onto a supermarket or a convenience store. So, I mean, I think there are some issues out there that we just have to be really careful of. It's sort of got a bit carried away, I think, in time. So this work is really important.
Thank you. Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you. I was a little bit disturbed today to hear, I mean, on the local board in Māngere, that a similar situation to theirs, to one that happened in South Auckland, was not approved in Parnell but has been approved in South Auckland. I mean, it's not our job to discuss ALA's processes, but what role do people have? Because I see in the work plan here that we're actually going to try and make it a bit more user-friendly and communicate to them, but what role do we really have with regards to decisions that we're not happy with? Does the community have? Because I think that's what the community is saying is, well, they're doing something that we don't want, or in Councillor Webster's case just then, the applicant looks like they've been penalised for something they didn't really think they were going to go down.
Through the Chair, that's quite a complex question. Essentially, the short answer is that appeal is the only way to challenge a decision of the District Licensing Committee. We can't, for example, I couldn't review a decision and ask for it to be changed. We have identified that we will be monitoring decisions, and where there are inconsistencies identified or opportunities where we think that we maybe could look into further in terms of the way that that we might deal with things on a regional basis, then there are sort of ways that we can tinker around the edges. But I mean, it's really important that the committee is still, it remains independent. These people are independent decision makers, so we can't interfere with that process. But another aspect to this work program is really getting that information and education out there to communities about what is required to be an objector and the sort of information that's actually really helpful in those district licensing committee settings. So part of that involves, we've given opportunities for people to come along to our district licensing committee forum, so that's an information sharing opportunity that's outside of that hearing, but also the development of documentation and resources around, you know, best practice examples, and actually just getting some really specific information out there to help with objectives. And that, in the end, can have an impact on decisions.
Thank you.
Just a little bit more,
Yeah.
Chair. So one of the things that we did discuss when we did the DLCs was them doing some kind of peer review on each other. Have we kind of gone down that track? I just don't see that.
Through the Chair, that's one of the things that we're still looking into, the best way to proceed. We haven't done it in a formalised way. There is an encouragement of sharing of decisions across the DLC chairs and members so that they're aware of what's happening and what's coming through. And we use our quarterly forums and chairs meetings to discuss current cases, I guess for another better word, lack of a better word, applications coming through that are of interest or a little bit difficult. But in terms of formalising that review, that's not something that we've come to a resolution about actually how we do that, but it is certainly something that we're investigating further.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Councillor Casey.
Just two questions related to your report. The first is, could you talk a wee bit more about the strategic focus and the graduated response model?
Through the Chair, if I could just invite Rob Abbott up. He's the Manager for Alcohol Licensing and can explain that further.
Good afternoon, councillors. The alcohol licensing units have always had a graduated response model of some sort, but they've varied throughout the legacy council areas. I'm in the process now of formulating a graduated response model for the whole of the region, which is consistent and will guide the inspectors as to how to deal with non-compliance that they find, what level our response should be, and if we come back and find non-compliance for a second or third time, how that should be escalated and graduated. So that's what I'm working on at the moment.
So what's the timeline for that being actually working?
Oh, it actually works in practice now in a non-documented and informal way. What I'm wanting to do is to formulate it. We're talking weeks, really.
But,
yeah.
I look forward to getting an update on that.
Fine.
You might need to answer the second question too, which is about where am I? Oh, the plea for, no, it's not you, it's the plea for plain English really from Lydia this morning in terms of everything to do with the conditions and the objectors and all the messaging we put out. I trust that you've taken that on board.
Yes, absolutely, and I've actually raised that at a recent chairs meeting as well.
Right, and so we'll see the results of that coming through as well?
I hope so.
All right, I'll tell you if we don't.
It's been moved and it's on the table for the debate. I just want to say that, you know, this has been a huge piece of work getting the district licensing committee set up, but also the administration to handle it when I think we do 10,000 licences per annum, which applications, which is a huge amount of work, and each have got to be signed off by the district licensing committee, or a member of the district licensing committee, the chairs. So that puts us under a huge amount of, it put a huge imposition on Auckland Council, which has, I think, 50% of the licences nationally, although we're only a third of the population, or just over a third of the population maybe. So it has been a big workload, and I think the staff have responded to the needs in a very comprehensive way. They've done a very good job. So we thank you people for administering it, but also the district licensing committees have done a pretty good job as well, because I think there's only been a very small number of appeals against their decisions, and it's probably less than 10. Is that correct? Or in that vicinity?
It's around that number.
Around that number. So I think that's been a good result. So it's coming up to about 18 months since they came into being at the moment. So it is timely that we do have this review. It should be, members should realise, well, reflect on the fact that it is a quasi-judicial process. I don't think we have cross-examination with RMA hearings, whereas in this concept it is permitted that that objectors or applicants can be represented by legal counsel, and that means that the people that go along to oppose as lay people are subjected to the cross-examination. I think that'd be correct. So that does put people under, it's probably a difficult situation that they're placed in when they go along to these hearings and realise that some lawyer's there who's going to put them under pressure by asking them questions and having to answer and especially when it's in relation to issues relation to the public or perception of issues that are very hard to kind of put into words as to what they actually relate to. So I think we've done a very good job. I think it is good that we are having a review, or you're looking at a review of the committees. I think the people that are working on, that are appointed, come up for appointment, or there's a reassessment of how they're going next year, 2016, and that's going to be an important process as well, because we obviously want to keep the nucleus that we've got there. They're doing a good job in place. So well done, you're doing a good job. Thank you. Councillor Penrose.
Yes, just following on for you, Mr Chair, and to acknowledge the team as well. And we always knew that whilst there were some concerns from some of the local boards, as we know, and requiring that review process, but coinciding with that was the LAP, and we needed to match that up and step through that process, as we know. And whilst that rolls through the LAP process, wasn't to make recommendations to the DLCs, but to highlight some concerns that we had through that process. And I'm sure that that process has been taken on board. But I think that, as you say, that review process now, we just had at the time 12 months, but because of the LAP, we had to sort of hold back on that. But I think we're in a pretty good position moving forward, and it's all about working together and communicating. So I think that'll come forward, going forward into the future.
Thank you. Well, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Declare that carried. Thank you very much. Thank you.